Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to do a little bit of a special review. This is going to be review number 1800 on the channel, and as I always do with these kind of mini milestone reviews, I just wanted to give a huge thank you to you guys who followed the channel over the last 6 years. Whether you've liked, subscribed, shared, sent me beers, met up with me in different places to show me around. It's just a huge pleasure to have something that started out for me as a hobby become something that so many people enjoy. So a huge thank you to you guys who are following the channel from the bottom of my heart. I've had a great time doing this over the last 6 years, and long may it continue, and I hope you guys continue to enjoy it for however long it goes on for. I'm sure I'll keep doing this pretty much until I drop dead. But for this review we are going to return to Belgium, and we're going to revisit a brewery who have very quickly become a firm favourite of mine, although it was only quite recently that I actually properly got into this particular style of beer. So we're going to go to Roeselare in West Flanders, and we're having a taste of yet another beer from Brouwerij Rodenbach. So this particular beer is the Caractère Rouge, which is yet another Flemish red ale, Flanders red ale, coming in at 7% ABV. This one apparently undergoes a primary aging, and then it's aged once again with cherries, raspberries and cranberries. So I've tried the Grand Cru from these guys before, I've tried the Vintage 2016 as well, and I really enjoyed both of them. So I'm very curious to see what this particular beer has to offer. This one, of course, was released on the 2nd of August 2019 through the Små Partiers in Systembolaget here in Sweden. And these beers are released, fairly regularly actually. It's not too difficult to get a hold of the Rodenbach beers up here in Sweden, although of course over in Denmark, where you've got a free market, you can get them just a little bit more easily, but they do tend to be released every 6 months or so from what I remember here. But really looking forward to trying this one, and as always I hope you guys enjoy my take on this beer. It's quite cool to be able to review another one of my favourite breweries beers for review number 1800, and I hope you guys enjoy this. But anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Brouwerij Rodenbach before. No doubt I will add some more in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Belgian beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then, to tell you once again a little bit about Brouwerij Rodenbach. So as I mentioned to you at the start of the video, Brouwerij Rodenbach are based in Roeselare in West Flanders, West Vlaanderen, in the western part of Belgium. And you'll find this city about halfway between Lille, which is just over the French border to the south, and Bruges, which is in Belgium a little bit to the north. The city is pretty much right in the middle of those two places. But the brewery itself was founded back in 1821 by the 4 Rodenbach brothers. This was Pedro, Alexander, Ferdinand and Constantine. And the brothers agreed initially to work as partners for 15 years, and at the end of this period it was Pedro and his wife Regina who took over the running of the brewery. In 1864 the brewery was taken over by their son Edward, and it saw considerable growth under his guidance actually. Edward's son Eugene took over the brewery in 1878, and he travelled to England to learn how to age and blend beers, and it was in fact this particular trait that Rodenbach went on to become famous for. Eugene unfortunately produced no male heirs, and thus the company became a limited liability corporation, with the majority of the shares remaining in the hands of the Rodenbach family until 1998, when the company was bought by the Palm Brewery Group, who also brew the Boon beers. The company is in turn owned by Swinkels family brewers, which was previously known as the Bavaria Group, and Bavaria of course is one of the big kind of macro brewed lagers that you'll find both in Belgium and in the Netherlands. But today the brewery produces in excess of 180,000 hectolitres of beer per year, and they're one of the best known breweries when it comes to the Flemish red ale style. So a very well respected brewery, this one. Quite easy to come across their beers wherever you are in the world, and like I said, along with probably Duchesse de Bourgogne, these guys are the best known Flemish red ale brewery. Of course, there's so much popularity surrounding sour beers these days across the world. It's quite cool to go back to a brewery like Rodenbach and see where it really began actually. So yeah, a cool brewery to review beers from, this one. If you get the chance to try some of the beers, I highly recommend that you do. The Vintage 2016 was quite honestly one of the best beers that I've reviewed. The Duchesse de Bourgogne, if you're wanting to stick to the same style, was also very good. The Grand Cru was also a very good beer, so I'm really curious just to see how this one differs from that, because I know this is a style that I very much enjoy. But yeah, that's all you really need to know about Brouwerij Rodenbach for the moment. If you want to learn a little bit more, of course, you can check out the brewery website in the description below, and of course you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that, and that'll keep you up to date with all the latest goings on there. So just to tell you a little bit about this beer itself, as I mentioned at the start of the video once again, this one is a 7% Flanders red ale. It undergoes a primary aging, and then it's aged again with cherries, raspberries and cranberries in a secondary aging stage. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. You know, it's quite similar actually to the Vintage 2016 artwork, just a slightly different colour there. There you can see it's won the Belgium Gold Beer Award there. It says on the back here, that's the French, that's the Dutch. Rodenbach Caractère Rouge awarded with a gold medal for best sour beer at the 2018 World Beer Association WBOA. Is an extremely complex and refined fruit ale. The brewing process takes over 2.5 years. It is matured in oak casks and with a final maceration with fresh red fruits, with cherries, raspberries and cranberries. So it says 5% cherries, 3.5% raspberries and 3.5% cranberries too. So yeah, an interesting blend. I wonder how they kind of arrived at that particular blend, but of course when it comes to sour beers they do take a hell of a lot of work actually to get these out there. I bought this beer, if I remember correctly, for 120 Swedish crowns, so that is in the region of 10 UK pounds, which is like 11-12 euros, something like that. So this beer is a little bit more expensive, but with the monopoly system that we have here in Sweden, I am getting it for a fairly good price. I would hazard a guess that if I bought this in Denmark in the free market, it would cost a little bit more. But yeah, a 7% Flemish red ale, this one, aged with cherries, raspberries and cranberries. So without further ado, let's get this guy out and we will get on with the tasting then. I'm really curious to see how this particular beer turns out. There's the little sort of top on this one before we open the little steel bit. But yeah, this one I'm sure will be an absolutely awesome beer in fact. So let's see if we can pop this. Ah, there we go. Nice little bit of smoke on the opening, and we can see if we can take this bit off as well. But yeah, let's get it out and we'll get some of it into the glass. So definitely a good beer to review for review number 1800. Like I said, the Flemish red ale is one, I think I tried it years ago, and that was the point where I really wasn't in to the different sour beers. But over, you know, since I tried the Vintage 2016, which to be honest was a little bit of a treat, I've really kind of grown to enjoy this style. And then since I tried the Duchesse de Bourgogne, thanks to Davor down in Slovenia, this is, as I say, is a style that I've really begun to enjoy. So just look at that. As you can see, when you pour this beer, it pours with a nice half finger of a frothy, I would say kind of pinky fawn head on this one. It's definitely got a nice sort of pink fawn kind of colour to it, this one. If I hold the beer up to the light, it's a very deep kind of ruby colour, this one. It's definitely, I think this beer is a little bit more rich and ruby in its colour compared to some of the other ones. It's actually very close in colour to the cover of the bottle. Whether that's intentional or not, I'm not quite sure. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass. You can see a few little ones just heading up towards the bottom of that head there, but overall it looks pretty nice, and it's not overly surprising, the appearance of this one, when you consider that it is a Flemish or a Flanders red ale, however you want to term this one. Of course, Flanders, you know, Flanders I think is the English name for the Flemish region of Belgium. It's a triple language country actually. There's a small German region, then you've got Wallonia, Walloon, however you want to call it, which is the French speaking region, and then you've got Flanders, which is the the Dutch-speaking region, the Flemish Dutch, if you like. So yeah, it's a very interesting country, Belgium, if you like. But yeah, a lovely looking beer, this one, not overly surprising in terms of its appearance. So let's take a closer look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this one. Oh, yeah. I really don't know what it is about these Flanders red ales that makes me just love them so much, but they're just absolutely beautiful. Straight away with this beer, it's got a really interesting blend of red fruit. The cranberries for me are jumping out at me straight away. You're getting a little bit of tartness from the raspberry as well. Being Scottish, you know, raspberries are a fruit that I kind of grew up with. We often had them in desserts. Like, raspberries is a fruit that I'm very, very familiar with. Cherries was one that, in honesty, I was never such a great fan of, but having drunk a few of these Flemish red ales, I think I need to give them another go, to be honest. So for me, you've got the juiciness of the cranberries forming the basis of this beer. The cherries, I think, are kind of blending in with that. And then on the front end of the nose, you're starting to get the more tart, sharper raspberries out of this one. Of course, there's a little bit of a kind of candied fruit quality to this one. You're going to get a little bit of figs and raisins out of the aroma of this beer as well, but you can really pick out the fruits that have been added into this beer. And it's really the juiciness and the tartness that come out of this one absolutely beautifully. Yeah, I could sit and smell that all day, and I think I said the same about the Vintage 2016 and the Grand Cru when I reviewed them as well. It's just a beautiful smelling beer, this one, and it really leans towards that sharper, fruity side of the spectrum. It kind of, compared to some of the sour beers that you'll get from the more modern breweries, if it's right to call them that, this one it's more subtle, and it just blends together really quite well, I have to say. I do like how everything goes together in this particular beer style. On the malty side of things with this one then, there's definitely, you can definitely pick out these nice oaky, woody elements coming out of the beer. There's definitely an element of vanilla just kind of underpinning the whole essence of this beer, if you want to say that. So it's really interesting just how that goes together. I do like how everything goes together in this one. So a nice sort of oaky, woody base to this beer, a little bit of vanilla in there. There's a little bit of an almost butterscotchy, brown sugary quality to this one, but I would say that is quite minimal. It's really quite a fruity and just very slightly sweet. It's the wood, the oak, and then the red fruits that are jumping out of this one. There's maybe a little touch of grassiness to this one. There's no floral or earthy quality to this one. I mean, you're always going to talk about the hoppy side of the beer a little bit. For me, there's just a little touch of grassiness to this beer. There's maybe a little element of an almost like tobacco-y, you know, like rolling tobacco for these hand-rolled cigarettes. There is a little bit of that in there, a little bit of leather maybe, something like that. It does have a little bit of a slightly more complex aroma to it than simply wood and vanilla, but it's a really beautiful smelling beer, this one. So as I always say, take a little bit of time and just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it, because you're very rarely going to come across a beer that has quite as an attractive aroma as this one is going to have. So yeah, let's have a taste of this beer then and see how we get on. This one is the Caractère Rouge from Brouwerij Rodenbach in Roeselare in West Flanders in Belgium. A 7% Flanders red ale that goes through an initial aging process, and then it has a second aging process with raspberries, cranberries and cherries. Should be an awesome, awesome beer, this one. Let's get stuck in. Slange, Skull, Proust, Santé. Yeah. That's a lovely, lovely beer, this one. Compared to the other Rodenbach ones, this one to me comes across as a little bit sharper and tarter compared to the other ones. I should probably say more tart if I'm wanting to do correct English, but Scottish people can't speak correct English. I'll just put that out there right away. This one to me definitely comes across as being a little bit sharper than the other ones that I've had from Rodenbach. Yeah, I would stick with that statement. You have to take a few sips of these beers to really get into them and fully kind of understand what they're all about, if it's right to say that. But this, again, is a beautiful, beautiful beer. I mean, I think this is one that probably, if you age this a little bit, I think, and you got a little bit more malty presence out of it, to be honest, I do wonder if I'm drinking this one a little bit young, but there's nothing wrong with it. It's one of these beer styles that you can afford to be just a little bit picky with. But this one to me definitely strikes me as being a little bit sharper and a little bit more tart compared to the other ones that I've tried in the Rodenbach series so far. I need to try the Alexander and see how that one comes across, and there are a few others that I've not tried yet either. But make no mistake, this is a beautiful, beautiful beer. If you like your sour beers, but you're more used to the modern ones, this one is definitely along the lines of being just a little bit more subtle, if you like. If you like your Berliner Weisses, for example, and you like the more berry Berliner Weisses, this is one that is really going to kind of tick all the boxes for you, I guess you could say, if we're making this, if we're referring this beer to the more modern sour beers. But this is one of the kind of old school ones, if you like. But yeah, it's a lovely beer, that, it really is. If you try these beers for yourself, I think you'll very quickly see why this brewery quickly became a favourite of mine. This is one of the ones that when I go to Belgium I will most definitely be visiting. But yeah, let's try and break the flavour of this beer down a little bit then. So in the middle of your palate, you're going to feel a nice, there is a little bit of a slightly bready character to this one, and it's quite minimal actually. It really feels like a sort of oaky, vanilla type bready quality. That is just the kind of basis of this beer in the middle of your palate. You'll feel that bready quality right across the middle of your tongue. The further you go into the aftertaste, the more it's going to start to feel like a kind of woody flavour that comes out of this. As you come further forward on the palate, you're going to get the more vanilla notes coming out of this beer as well. Really, the vanilla side of the beer comes out a little bit further forward on this one. There is, in the middle of the palate, I want to say there is a little touch of a slightly leathery flavour. If you go to the very centre of your palate and then come forward, there's almost a little touch of a kind of nutty flavour in there as well. In the very centre of your tongue, there's a light biscuity, caramelly note to this one. The malt base does have a really good level of complexity to it, and a lot of that is because of the fodders, when this beer's been aged in the fodders. And you know, a lot of that flavour is just reflected in the centre of your palate there. But of course, these beers for me are all about the balance. Usually Belgian beers, the focus is on the yeast and how that affects all of the other things in there. But for these more sour Belgian beers, for me it's just all about how you get the balance right. And yeah, that's just... these beers are just kind of incredible. I mean, I always say on the channel, I love my traditional German beers, the Doppelbocks and the Helles and the Dunkels and stuff like this. For me, one of these Flemish red ales, and even if you go to like Westmalle for the Tripels, and things, and you know, Westvleteren for their quadrupel that they've got, the Westvleteren 12, you know, these beers are classic beers, and they're classic for a reason. They're just beautiful. This is one of these beers that really fits into that category for me. The way that everything goes together in this one is just absolutely awesome. So I think I picked a good beer for number 1800, basically, is what I'm saying. But the malt base and the way that the yeasty quality goes together in this one really is top notch. On the hoppy side of things then, you're not really getting too much in the way of hoppy quality out of this beer. And when it's aged for so long, you know, that's kind of what you'd expect. In the back corners of your palate, you can maybe detect just a tiny little bit of an earthiness there. As you come further forward, that does kind of spread along the sides of your tongue. There's maybe a teeny little bit of a floral quality on the front corners of the palate, then around the very front curve of the tongue you've just got that lighter kind of grassy quality that you'd expect from the hops as well. Behind the front curve of the palate, of course, that's where you get that little oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters would start to come out of the beer. But when you add fruit to a beer like this, you're always going to get the fruity side of the beer coming out around the edge of the tongue, and that almost suppresses some of the green side of the hops. And for me, This one, it's really interesting how that goes together. So you can really detect the juiciness of the cherries, and the cherries almost give the beer just a little bit of a sour quality, and I think you detect the cherries a little bit further into the aftertaste with this one. The cranberries are lingering there the whole time. The cranberries are really giving the beer just that juicy quality, and if you just go behind the front tip of your tongue almost, you can really feel the sharpness of the raspberries just pushing out there. The cherries are almost like it's almost like they just have a slightly darker sourness to them, and the raspberries have that brighter sour quality to them, if that at all makes sense. And then it's the cranberries, I think, that are giving you the juicier side of this beer. Is definitely a little bit more of a kind of fruity complexity to this one. Of course, you've got a little bit of a figgy quality, a kind of candied strawberry in there as well, and that lingers into the aftertaste. But the sharpness of the raspberries and the sort of darker sourness that you get from the cherries, that really does linger there as well, which is really quite nice actually. I mean, this is definitely, compared to the other Rodenbach beers, as I've reiterated a couple of times in this video, to me this one definitely comes across as being a little bit sharper and more tart compared to the other ones, and I think some of the brown sugary notes in this are a little bit more pronounced compared to the other ones as well, and that possibly is because this one is just slightly higher in alcohol. I think the other ones were sort of around, I think they were around 6.5%, the vintage 2016 and the Grand Cru, if I'm remembering correctly. But I mean, it's a slightly different take on a Flemish radio, this one, but again, it works very, very well, and you wouldn't expect anything less of Brouwerij Rodenbach, to be quite honest. They're not going to put out a bad beer at all, and you know, this is just, it's definitely just a slightly different take on this style, and it's quite cool that they can produce something like this as well. So if you like your Flemish radios a little bit more tart and sour, this is definitely the one that I would recommend to you over the vintage 2016 or indeed the Grand Cru or the Duchesse de Bourgogne. So yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel of this one then, yeah, mid-bodied beer, this one, I would think. Carbonation, it's quite smooth in this, but it does have a little bit of a prickle in the beginning until your mouth gets used to it. The mouthfeel overall for me, it does have an oily quality to it, but at the same time it can be a little bit wet. The malty side of this beer is quite smooth and quite sweet. You get a lot of woody character out of this one, which is really what smooths this beer out. There's virtually no IBUs to this one. I mean, you'd be lucky if you get 10 IBUs out of this beer in terms of hoppy bitterness. Very little to that. The beer, the sour side of the beer, this, as I said, is a little bit sharper and more tart compared to the other ones you'll get in the Rodenbach series, but it really does round out quite nicely and become a little bit more juicy. The cranberry side of this beer, but you've got the raspberries and the cherries kind of wrestling with that a little bit, and you've also got you've got a really nice juicy fruity quality to it overall, as I said. So a little bit sharp, very smooth in its malt base, a little bit more sour compared to the other ones, but overall it's just another beautiful beer, and it's quite cool to see that you can take this beer style that you think would be quite linear and you can just play with it a little bit and make it a little bit sharper and tarter compared to the other ones. But a beautiful, beautiful beer, this one, and I think this was a very good beer to review for number 1800. So let's just leave it at that because I feel I'm rambling a little bit now. This one was the Caractère Rouge, a 7% Flemish radio that has an initial aging stage, and then they add cherries, cranberries and raspberries to it for a secondary aging stage from Brouwerij Rodenbach in Roeselare in West Flanders in the western part of Belgium. A beautiful beer, this one, and very apt, if you like, for review number 1800, a style that I really, really enjoy, and it's been a great pleasure to review this one for you. If you like your Flanders radios a little bit more sour, this is one that will tick the boxes for you. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Thank you for all the support you've given the channel over the last 6 years. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Brouwerij Rodenbach as well. Do let me know some other Flemish radios that you'd like to see me review as well, and I'll see if I can get those and review them for you on the channel over the next little while. And you know, as I say, this is a style that I really quite enjoy. Thank you again. This is the Caractère Rouge from Brouwerij Rodenbach in Roeselare, West Flanders in Belgium. Until the next time, Slàinte just now. Check out my social media and I'll catch you guys very, very soon. Slàinte, skål, prost, santé. Check out this beer. Cheers.